spiritual writer once said that never will you find Jesus saying, "Suffer as I have suffered," but that he does say, "Love as I have loved." And no one, and everyone, I think, every one of us knows that you cannot love someone without entering into their suffering. God would not love us and ignore our suffering. That's why he came among us to embrace our suffering, to embrace our fears, and to teach us that love involves suffering. In the first reading, we read something that sounds rather gloomy, the description of the suffering servant. Something that Christians finally would be able to identify and recognize that was a prophecy about Jesus. But it was really the story originally about the prophets who suffered because they proclaimed the good news of God. That they loved God so much and were so faithful to God that they suffered as a result because people would not listen to them. There's no spouse in this church that doesn't suffer because they are married to someone that they love. And then because they live out that theme of better for worse, richer for poor, sickness and in health. There's no parent here in this church that doesn't suffer for their children. But it's not something gloomy. It's something done out of love. And that's what makes the suffering possible and bearable. In the second reading today, in the letter to the Hebrews, we hear a very beautiful testimony to God's love for us. It says that he entered so much into the human story that he was tempted like all of us are tempted. That he experienced what it meant to be human, as all of us do, except in the area of sin. Some of us might say, well, if he never sinned, then how human was he? But in reality, there are two ways that we use the word human. Sometimes we make a mistake. We say, well, after all, I'm only human, and we're talking about human weakness there. But we also use the term human to talk about how wonderful people are. When we see a great act of love or valor, we say, what a magnificent human being, or what a great act of humanity. You see, we weren't meant to be the people who lived in human weakness. We were meant to be the people who were human enough to shine forth the glory of God. But Jesus was like us in all things except sin. And he had to be. How else could God have loved us? If he stayed up in heaven somewhere and looked at all the pain we go through, could he have ever been credible to us? Is this the kind of God we could believe in, especially in this year of faith? When we're asked, our faith is challenged to grow a step further. How could God have said he loved us if he knew nothing about disappointment, or frustration, or failure, or pain, or disappointment? How could God have loved us if he didn't know what it meant to need to be loved, to know what it meant to be betrayed, to know what it meant to be rejected? And if you look at Jesus, all those things happened to him. If he knew nothing about fear, or nothing about crying, and yet Jesus did all of it. He cried. He was afraid when he knelt in the garden. So afraid that he sweat drops of blood. He had to enter into the human picture to be credible to us, to serve us. And that's why he says to James and John, it's not about glory and honor and prestige and power. It's all about service. If you want to be great in the kingdom of God, then you must be at the service of one another. That's what makes us great. And the apostles didn't get it. James and John certainly didn't get it, did they? But neither did the other apostles. Because after a while, what happened? When they heard that James and John asked the question, they became indignant. Not because they asked the question, but because they asked first. Because they all had the same idea in mind. That they wanted to be sitting at the the right and the left hand of Jesus. And Jesus had to gather them together and say, it's not about power. It's not about what you do. It's about who you are and who you become because you're transformed by love. And the transformation in love always involves some struggle or pain. There's no easy way around it. We have to walk through it, not around it. And they didn't even get it then. In Luke's Gospel, when you get to the account of the washing of the feet, unlike John, he speaks why Jesus washed the feet of the apostles. And you know why? Because they were arguing over who was the most important. And he made them sit down, and he washed their feet. And he said, you want to be great? Then you must wash each other's feet. You must be at the service of all. You know, sometimes we get the wrong message, but it's an easy message to get in the world in which we live. Because the world in which we live is more concerned about what we do, what status we have, what power we have, how wealthy are we, what kind of an impact do we make, who has the loudest voice, who has all the toys. And Jesus tells us the exact opposite. He says, in the kingdom of God, it's not about any of those things. It's about those who are willing to lay down their lives in service for others. And it's about the suffering that comes with it. Today is World Mission Sunday. Throughout the Catholic world, in every parish throughout the world, a collection is being taken to support the missions and missionaries who serve sometimes in very difficult situations, in very difficult parts of the world, to bring the message of Christ to others. They are really on the front line in terms of being people who serve. We're asked to be generous in that collection and in our prayers for missionaries, because they remind us of what Jesus reminded us, that if we wish to be great in the kingdom, we need to be at the service of one another. Jesus did not come into this world to tell us, suffer as I have suffered. He came into this world to tell us, love as I have loved. And you and I know that if we've ever loved, how it involves a certain amount of struggle and a certain amount of suffering, because that's what makes love.